An article is something that sections out the content of an HTML document. However, the difference between an article and a section is section also does the same thing, but article can be independently cited and can be used. So if you want the piece of information or a block of information to be cited and to be used by the others so that somebody can bookmark it and then read the content, then you go for the article. Both the things does the same thing. The article also has a heading as well as the content inside it. The section also has the same thing, but when we say it's a section, we usually don't mean to say that somebody is going to quote that particular section and come back to that section. Okay? You can have section inside a section, article inside a section, and in the other way around, you can have a section within an article, article within an article. However, there is one small thing. If you have an article that is inside other article, then the inner article must be related to the content of the outer article. So if you have, even though if you look at the definition that says article is a self-contained composition. So that means to say that it is not dependent on the other things. However, if you nest an article, if you place an article inside the other article, you must say to it that the article that is there inside it is related to the article that surrounds it. So that is one entry, and you may find that it is a bit difficult to understand the document. This is meant, or this is created by an expert, the people with a lot of knowledge on the HTML, and they have come up with this particular model. So when you look at these particular things, you may say that what great effect will it have? Just imagine somebody has to pass through all the document and somebody has to index all those documents and then allow the others, rest of the world to query on them. They are going to find it too difficult to index your content. That's the reason you are supposed to go with this particular model. Now, you may ask one question. What will happen if I put a section? What will happen if I put an article? Will the form change? Will the content change? The answer is no. This is just the schematic representation of this structure. You are not showing the format, you are showing only the structure. You just show that these contents are there within your document so that any user agent or the search engine will be able to detect the content easily and index it. Now let's go to the next one, that is the aside. The aside usually comes to the other side. If you have read the magazine, most of the time you will see those asides. So within the magazine you have an article and somewhere you will see a small other colored block that has the block quote, or they may have some related article which is part of the given article or a section. You may have a larger section here. Some part of this section, the full quote of it will be shown as a sidebar. Some interesting thing. Something if you have a article on a particular Independence Day or something, one important, maybe one quote of the Prime Minister will be there as the sidebar, and that is what is the aside. So aside is tangentially related to the content. So when you put the aside here, that's related to the section or that is related to the article. Okay. What is the use? Again, this gives you a structure for the document. Now, usually what we do is we either use the full quote or sidebar or even the advertising. Suppose if you go to any sites, you will see that there will be either an advertisement from the Google or a related ad for a given article. Suppose if you have an article on the external hard disk, there will be an advertisement from the C8 or maybe WD about the external hard disk. That is related. That is not part of the document, but you want to advertise it. In that case, you put those advertisements in the aside. Now, how do I put the aside? The tag is very simple. you start an article, and within the article you say that this part of it is the site, and to do that, just put it inside the site and it's not. Okay. Now, if you notice over here, you will notice here that only web browser completely supports the date and time input and so on and so forth. And in their side, what they are saying that taking the date from a calendar is not only a way to input it and the date and value and so on and so forth. So that means the main article discusses about the browser that supports the date and time and their sites. We'll just talk about one particular piece of it. The last one to come in this category is the footer. Like header, footer represents some information relating to the section or the document. If you put the footer inside a section, so if you have a entire document and if you put it directly over here, that means this footer is related to the entire document. If you have a section or an article and if you put a footer inside that, that means to say that this is related to the section and article. So a footer may also contain go to the next page and the previous page. It is also allowed. Related to the section. So you may have part of this section here and you want to allow the user to navigate from this side to the other side, then you can have a footer, or you may have a small information and then you put a simple word if you want to know read more, something of this kind. So when they click on that read more, the entire article or additional details will come. That part will go in the footer. However, one thing you must understand that when you have the footer cannot have one more footer inside it, that's not allowed, as well as footer cannot have a header inside it, that's not allowed. But footer can have anything else. Apart from it, you can have a full section or an article inside that footer. It is still allowed. Okay. So any other element you can have. Most of the time, what we have within the footer is about the author, about the copyright information, license of agreement, or this kind of thing that is related to a particular section will be found there. So if you look at this particular document over here, you notice that there is an article here and then you have a footer at the bottom and it says published on a particular date, and then you have one more footer that has some navigation that will take you to different places. So you have the AXF, that's a hyperlink to the different piece of it. So this is how you put the footer and then use it. Okay. And the usual thing, footer doesn't have to appear at the bottom of the page. You can have a page with the starting with the footer. It's allowed. So it is not, doesn't mean that the footer always has to come at the bottom side. However, footer just says that this piece is related to something else. Okay. And I think I've already told you, the footer is there on the body itself, so it is related to the entire document. If the footer you are adding for a particular section, it does mean that it is related to a particular section below. Now here you will notice that a sample that has been shown. You have a header. This will be a header for the entire document. You have a footer that is this footer will be there for the entire document, and you will also notice that a header may also have a logo or some other image inside it. And usually you have a navigation bar that is the main navigation. Then you will have an article within the document. You will have a section of the article and a full quote that is shown in the SI. So this is the general structure that you have. This is the usual structure that you find in blogs. Okay. So the reason why most of the things are related to blog is because of this Web 2. The concept of Web 2 is it's not just the authors who are publishing the pages or not the web designers. It is the ordinary people. You have Amitabh, you have Prime Minister, you have Chief Minister. Everybody writes on their blog, and some people are crazy about it and they read them. Okay. When I say it doesn't mean that they are crazy. Sometimes they have good information inside it. maybe a developer has a blog and he's explaining a new way of writing the code and so on and so forth. And the search engine wants to index that. It's going to be a very difficult task if it is not written according to a proper structure. And that's the reason they have put it in that particular structure. Just to tell you how the things have ended up. In the olden days, we had the same structure. Things have not changed. What we have in the olden days was there was a header, there was a footer, and there was a sidebar with the different things. This is for exclusively for a blog, different posts within the blog. People used to use the div with the ID to identify the different pieces. Now that has changed, and now what we have is this. The header has to be mentioned with the header tag, the nav with the nav tag, footer and article. You notice that there is one other piece there, a section with an ID. So you can put an ID for the section. Doesn't mean that you can just write a section like that. Okay. And you notice that section contains article. Why the section contain article is whenever somebody posts a within a blog, that can be independently cited by somebody else. You can say that on this page, Amitabh has said something. So you don't have. If I want to know, maybe when there was an attack on Mumbai by the terrorists, on that day Amitabh has written a blog about how he was feeling on that day and so on. People quote that. Now, just to know what was the situation that he was going through, I don't have to read the entire blog of Amitabh. I can just go to that particular post and then read it. So, that means to say that this particular piece or this particular blog or this particular post can be independently cited. So, I can just bookmark that and use it in my site. That is why it is taken as an article. If it was a section, it's not possible. Sections are not usually meant for bookmarking, whereas the articles are meant for doing it. So how do we do it? You start with the header. You write the heading section here. You start. You can put a footer for an article, and then start with one more article, and so on and so forth. It is how you put the content. Now, this is the general side. You don't have to know about it, but I'm just giving you an idea how the things are being represented. Now, every site will have, usually there will be a header section, there will be different articles which are there, and there will be a footer section. Okay, so this is the general structure. You have the header, you have the main content area, you have a sidebar, and you will have a footer. Now, this is not a default or de facto that you have to follow it, but this is the general structure, and this is how you represent it. So you start with the header, and you notice over here there is a div that has been put. It is allowed. This doesn't mean that divs are discouraged. You can put it. Now, what's the difference between the section, article, and the div? Div is also sectioning, but it is more generalized version of sectioning. Div can be used for anything, to section out anything, not specific. So when you use the div, the web search engine will not be able to detect what you really intended to say. When you use an article or when you use the word section, the search engine or the user agent knows very well that what was your intention when you started typing that particular thing. So when you say article, your intention was somebody can bookmark it or somebody can cite it and then use it. When you say it's a section, your intention is it is some piece of information, but you don't expect somebody to cite that particular piece of information. And you notice over here, you have a side here, maybe for this article and for the other article, and the end you have the footer. Okay, we will see how to do that thing in the lab. Let's go to the other section that we were using most heavily, and that is the CSS. So let's quickly go through the CSS and some part within the CSS. As usual, I'm not going to go through the entire thing. Today we are going to just say what is CSS and how to use the rules within it. You have already used the CSS, so it's not going to be something. Now, what was the reason why CSS came into the picture? What was that thing which was not there in HTML that forced people to start with the CSS? The problem was when the HTML was designed, people were only interested in the content, not the formatting. So when you use this h1 tag, even though or h2 tag or something of this type, you just meant to say that even though you were using it, I don't know whether you were, when you use it in your BC or BSc, somebody actually told you which one has to be used. Remember, when you use the H1, in the olden days, H1 should be there only once. You're not supposed to repeat H1. You start repeating H1 again and again, that means to say that you are going to confuse the search engine altogether. H1 is supposed to come only once. There is a meaning for using it. Inside H1, if you want to have this subsection, it is supposed to be H2 and so on. There was some semantic that people were following. However, how to display H1? What is the size of the font that need to be used? That was not specified. So people just said that main heading has to be shown in the H1. Subheading has to be shown in the H2. Section heading has to be shown in H3. How do you show it? It's up to the browser. So browser will show the content. So what was the problem is, every browser came up with their own implementation. So some of them, the heading H1 appeared very large, in the others it was very small, and so on and so forth. So the people who were designers were definitely not happy with it, because the page looked different in different browser, and in some browser the page looked very ugly, and they wanted to format the content. However, the team from HTML said that we are not going to entertain that particular thing. But later they said, okay, we will give you some tags which you can slightly format it. But the problem then, it so happened is there were too many things to be taken care of when people started formatting the things. And things went beyond their control altogether. And then they said that we are not going to bother about formatting, let somebody else take care of the formatting. Okay, and that's the reason why the CSS came into picture. So the CSS is meant for something else. Now, what's the full form of the CSS? You already know by now. It's a cascading style sheets. Okay, what does it do? It describes the presentation of the document. It's not the content. It's not the structure. It's the presentation. So its work is to show the content in a formatted way. So if you create a page and if you want to structure that page according to a particular format, then for structuring use HTML. For showing it in a beautiful way, use CSS. Don't get confused with it. Now, CSS is not just meant for HTML, it is meant for structuring any language that can be written in the form of a markup. So any markup language, you can associate it with the CSS. One of the such markup language is the XHTML as well as the XML. Even though XML has its own style sheets, but the concept is same. So you have a markup and you want to format the markup, you use the CSS. What's the advantage of using the CSS? Using CSS, you can separate the structure from the representation. So otherwise what will happen is, the representation or the format will also come along with the tag, and it's going to confuse each and every one, and the people will immediately get confused with it. So let's look at a general page over here. So whenever you create a page, you first look at the content, how the things has to be structured, what has to be shown. That is the HTML. HTML says which content you need to show. How do you present it? That is given by the CSS. How does this page behave? That is, when you click on it, when you drag on, when you move the mouse on it, or when you do something with it, what is the behavior of this page? That is decided by the JavaScript. So all three things are related together. HTML is like the skeleton, and the presentation is the other flesh that you have, and the way in which it acts. That is what is the JavaScript together. So what is done? I'm not going to go to the JavaScript as of now. So what is done here is content is separated by its appearance or the presentation. So content is given by an HTML document. Presentation is given by the CSS document. Together, it is combined by a user agent or a browser, and that is shown to the user. The next question is why the word CSS? Why it is cascading? Why not just a style or style sheet? The reason for cascading is how it can be applied. So you can have different style information, and whenever there is a conflict, there is a rule that governs it, and the rule is based on the cascading idea. So you can have an external style sheet, you can have an internal style, you can have a style inline, you can have a style that is given by the user. So many people can give the different style for the same content. Remember, this is the same content. I can give one style, you can give one more style, somebody else can give other style. Now, whose style will be used up? That is decided by this cascade, and you notice that it is building one after the other. Whichever that comes front will win this race. That's why it is called as cascading. I'm going to talk about how this cascading works in the other slides, but you have to remember that particular thing. The word cascade is because the rules are applied in the cascading style. Okay, so this is what is there. Okay. Whenever we think of using CSS, there is one important thing you must understand. The CSS is a set of instructions, and this will suggest the web browser to draw something or to show something on the page. Remember, it's just a suggestion. It is not a order for the web browser. So CSS, when you apply CSS, it is suggesting the web browser that you show it in this format. You cannot force a browser to show the content of CSS. However, almost all browsers today will support the CSS, and even though this is a suggestion, they will obey the suggestion and they will format the content according to the set of rules that are specified in the CSS. Now let's look at a brief history. I'm not going to go in depth into what happened then because we are not a history major students. So it started in the 1996 with the version 1.0, and what was added there was the IDs class, which you are already familiar in the CSS was introduced. Later in the 2.0 version, they have this absolute and relative, that is floating idea, as well as they have this z axis, that is if you want to show one above the other, we are going to see that thing. That is z index was introduced. 2.1 was just a bug fix for them. However, when it came to the 2.0, they found that too many things have to be done in CSS, and by the end of this 2.0, they actually modularized the work of the CSS. Now the CSS3, again, this is done by the same W3C. It's the same governing body for this one. The standard is controlled by W3C. However, this is a separate group altogether that is handling it. When it came to the 2005, people said that too many things have to be done with the CSS because too many things changed. From the 2005, things have changed dramatically. There were different types of gadgets which came into picture. There were different types of monitors, different types of resolution came into picture, and a lot of things need to be done. So what they did was they said you cannot have one single piece. Let's split that thing into different modules, and one person will work with, or maybe one team will work with one module. So as of now, there are a lot of modules which are there inside it, and some modules are completely accepted, and some modules are still in the process of recommendations, and some at the final stage. And this is the full structure of it. The green says that it is all, the recommendation has been done. Red says that it is the working draft. This is 1 year ago. This has been, I didn't got any other picture apart from this one. You notice that this is all accepted. Second one, this is level 2.1, all accepted. In the 3 version 3, colors, namespace, selectors, and media queries are only accepted. These things, background, and so on and so forth, they are in the candidate recommendation. They are going for the final state. And you notice there are something like paged media, print profile. They are going for the last call for any correction. And if you notice on this one, there is still in the working draft, transform, transition, and Ruby and other things. This is as of 1 year ago. This was the state. I didn't get any other picture for 2014. So as of now, I think at the end of the 2012 itself, 50% of the modules work has been done. Whichever that has been accepted, it's there with the browser. That means to say that not all CSS3 are available in all the browsers, but most of the browsers support all the things over here. The reason why not everything is they have modularized. They are not saying that this is one standard, one module, the maturity of one module, second module, and so on and so forth. They have done it in that way so that the browsers or the user agents will be able to support the modules, and they are able to support all the things at all the time. So that's the reason you notice that when I showed Internet Explorer or when I showed the Chrome, not everything is accepted by them, even for the HTML5. The reason is a lot of things have changed, and they have to incorporate everything in their browser. If you look at the history of JavaScript, the JavaScript itself has changed. So the people who are designing this web browser, the Chrome, the Firefox, or the Internet Explorer or Safari, they have to be in compliance with almost all recommendations. So it becomes difficult for them to put everything and show it in one shot. That's the reason you find that some people excel in CSS3, some lag behind, but they are leading in HTML5 and so on and so forth. Okay? But overall, Chrome is performing at its best. The reason is the WebKit. It's doing wonderful, and many people like this browser because of its support to the HTML5 as well as CSS3. That does not mean that people are not using Internet Explorer. However, as of now, Internet Explorer is slightly lagging behind the others, but they are excelling in some other things. One is going behind, others are using it. Why did I tell you that? Is whenever you design this HTML5 or CSS3 based application, must be very careful, and you must know very well that these are going to be supported by all the browsers. If they are not supported, your application will look very messy when it is shown on the unsupported browsers. Now let's look at what is there in CSS. Again, if you want to go through the spec, it is w3c.org and search for the CSS specification. You will get the entire specification. Now let's go to the style sheet. What is there in this style sheet? Style sheet contains number of rules inside it. And what is a rule? Rule is a statement within the style sheet that describes how the things have to look like. So you take one element, how it should look like. So you are just giving the formatting for a given element, and each rule contains a selector, a property, and a value. For example, H1 is a selector. So you are saying that how the H1 should look like. So you take one tag H1, and then you say in H1 which things you are going to change. In this case, I'm changing the font size and how it has to be changed. You specify the value. So you have a rule. The rule starts with the selector. There is an open curly bracket, and it ends with the curly bracket. And in between them, you have a property and you have a value. You can have more than one selector. and you can have more than one property value pair. So here you notice there are more than one selectors, and all the selectors, if you have more than one, they have to be separated by a comma. Okay, and if you have more than one property value, that is property value pair, they have to be separated by a semicolon. So every property, remember the last one doesn't have to have a terminator, that is semicolon, it's allowed. Uh, so the last one there is no need to put a semicolon, but whenever I write it, I usually put the semicolon even for that because some of the browsers don't like that thing. So let's look at the first one. First example, wherein we have more than one property value, and you notice that I have a tag body that is a selector, and this is the entire thing is a rule, and here I have a property and value. You notice a strange thing here. There is more than one value that is applied for this particular property. So you have 1, 1, 1. What's the meaning of saying Tahoma, Arial, and answer it? If Tahoma is not there, if that font is not there, go for Arial. If it is not there, go for answer it. So it doesn't mean that all of them are applied. So on the client side, if they don't have the first font, go to the second font. If they don't have the second font, go for the third font and then try to display. What if they don't have all these three fonts? Then smash back to the browser and ask the browser what default font it has. Then it's going to show the content. Now this full piece that is written, any one of the piece, either this or the other one, this is called as a declaration. So this piece, any block starting from the property value pair, this is called as a declaration. That's the declaration block. So rule contains a number of declarations, and each declaration has a property value pair. Okay, so that is what is the meaning of saying it. Okay. Selectors may have a simple HTML tags, or you can have the other one. We are going to talk about it. And there are a lot of selectors which are available, and that's the reason it is not being shown out there. So let's look at the guidelines, how to use the selectors. So let's start with the one, and this could be a question. Explain the guidelines of using the rules in CSS. So there are some 6 guidelines there, how to go about it. The first one is every statement must have a selector and a declaration section. So there must be a selector followed by a declaration, and the declaration is a combination of property and a value pair, and it must be placed within the curly bracket. The next one is declaration is one or more properties separated by a semicolon. Now, even though you may say, okay, that's obvious one, they never said that it has to be written in the second line. So that's a very important thing. The spec does not say that you have to put a line separation between one and the other. Spec says that the property and the value must be separated by a colon, and one declaration must be separated by the other declaration by a semicolon. Then why do we put the line break? This is easier for us to read. Okay? So the machine does not expect you to put a semicolon. If you don't put a semicolon, you put it in all in one line, it's going to work fine, because the separation between one declaration and the other declaration is the semicolon. The next one is each property has a property name followed by a colon and then the property value. So there is each property has a name of the property followed by a colon and there is a value. Guidelines are very simple, and you don't have to mug up this thing. You know it, you have been using it. Now there are different types of values that can be given for a particular property. That does not mean that a property can take anything and everything. Property have a specific type of values that can only be supplied, and if you supply a wrong value, this is not going to work. One of the things that you have already seen is the color. If you take a color, lot of possibilities are there. You can have so many, all the website colors can be shown, 256 colors can be shown over there. It's going to work fine, but in the color you can say 12 points or something, which doesn't make a sense. For example, here, a example that is shown in this place is you have something called as clear. I'm going to talk about it. The word itself says that you want to clear something. You can say clear both incorrect, left, right, and none. So these are only possible values. You cannot write a clear middle. That word is not allowed there. That value is not allowed there. And if you are using Dreamweaver or for that matter any of the IDs will help you out with the possible values. You don't have to mug up them except for the examination. That is a theory exam where you are not allowed to take any electronic gadget. So in that case, you must remember what are the possible values that it can take. Some wild guess, because that can be asked for MCQs. Let's go to the next one, and that is the sometime properties can take number of values, and like in the case of font, and in that case, each of them must be separated by a comma. So, for example, font family can be Arial, Verdana, and Sans serif. So, you are separating them by a comma. If there is more than one value, it is separated by a comma, and if there is a space in between the values, you can put a double quotes here. For example, times, space, new, space, Roman is there. You can put it in the double quotes. Okay. Next one is sometimes the values will have a unit as well as the actual value, like a point size and other things. You are not supposed to put a space between the value and the unit. For example, font size can be 30 pixel. It can be 12 points, it can be 120%, it can be 1 M. I'm going to talk about what does this M and the pixel, you know very well, means altogether. That's not a pixel, it's a pico value. I'll talk about it in the other classes. What does that mean? However, as of now, the guideline says that if you have a unit of measurement, you are not supposed to put a space between the unit of measurement like this one and the actual value. This part is the actual value, the other one is the unit. Okay. With like HTML, you can use the white spaces even with the style shape for easier for reading and writing. What's the meaning of saying white spaces? You can have a space separation here, you can have a space separation here, you can have a line break here, like HTML. When you write the code, you can have that one so that you can easily read them, but that will not be shown as it is to the user, like an HTML. When you put an enter in the code, the browser will not automatically take the content to the next line. Even though when you type the code, when you put the HTML tag, when you press enter, the ID shows that okay, this is in the next line, but that is only for your reference. For the browser, you have to put either paragraph tag or either any block tag or a break to get it to the next one. Let's go to the cascading part, and I've told you what the meaning of saying cascading. I know you are already familiar. The styles, there can be more than one style that is applicable for a given element. So if you take a H1 tag, you may say that H1 tag is 12 points. The browser may have a default as 14 points. Whose values it is going to take? That depends on the cascading rule. And the cascading rule is the one which is very nearest will always win the race. So which is very close to the given element. That means if you put an inline, that's going to win the race. If it is embedded within the page, that will come next. If it is an external, that will be the last one. There is also a browser. Every browser has its own way of representing the content. If you don't have a style sheet, or maybe when you did it in your BCA class, you were just using H1 or maybe H2 and so on and so forth. But the browser was showing it in a different format. How did it get that format? Every browser comes out with its own style sheet. If you don't apply a style sheet, it assumes its default styles and it's going to apply it. However, anytime you can override it by supplying your own style sheet and asking the browser not to use its style. If you don't provide the style, browser will default back to its own style, then use it. So every CSS has a priority, and this prioritizing is called as cascading. More about it as we start doing it. I'm not going to waste my time in telling you which one will win. You can do that experiment to figure out which one is going to win, and when you see the same is relevant. Okay, so it's like telling you many things about it and then confusing you. In the lab, I actually shown you once. We will do it many times how the things will affect and so on. Okay, let's go to the next one, and that is the format for creating the style sheet. Now you can have one selector. That means one selector and using one selector and multiple declaration, one selector and one declaration, one selector with multiple declaration, multiple selectors with one declaration. What's the meaning of saying multiple selectors? So I have H1, H2, H3. All of them I want it to be in red color. In a one shot, I am writing everything. So instead of writing H1 I am red color, H2 I am red color. In one shot, I can write everything. So separation. Next one is the what we call it as contained. So in other words, we say it is a nested. So here, when you put a space here, it means to say that this M is contained inside the paragraph. So if you find an M tag inside a paragraph tag, then apply the blue color. If the M is outside the paragraph, so M is not contained within the paragraph, then don't apply it. So this rule is applied only for that. More about it in the other slides. So whenever you think of applying the style, you always remember the inheritance. Now, if you look at any HTML document for that matter, the general HTML document will contain, we start with HTML. Inside that, you have two sections. One is the head. I'm not going to close it. You have head and slash head. Okay. Then you have the body, and inside the body you can have anything. Okay. You notice this structure. You start with the head. You start with the HTML. HTML contains the head. Head may contain a tag called as title, and then there is a body, and within the body you can have many things. So you notice that there is an inheritance. The top one is the HTML, and then it splits up. Now when you apply the style, you must always understand that if you apply a style to this element, the style automatically is inherited by the other element. So that means to say that if I go to this body and if I tell the font color is red, every H1, H2, P and anything, whatever that contains the text automatically gets the color as red. It is just inherited by the text that surrounds it. So what's the advantage there is you don't have to go to individual pieces and then make the changes. Now what if I want this thing to come in blue color? In that case, go here and apply a new style. So wherever you want and change, you go to that tag and change. So that's the advantage. You go to a root and you set some standard information. If you want a specific, go to that element and apply the specific style. So this is called as the inheritance.